I know this Chile from church. Growing up, I saw her once in '92 December, and
Okay.
I was a bunch of buddies. We had a church camp, and it was in the morning. Guys kind of getting up, trying to get ready for the day. And she was just passing the two of her friends, and for whatever reason, I just told my friends, "See the girl in the middle, the tall one? I'll marry
Yeah.
her someday."
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I didn't see her the rest of the camp. And then a month and a half later, I meet her. She's coming from school. I was out of school. I was trying to have a conversation. And in the conversation, we talked about, the church we went to. And then that's when it started coming back to me like, okay, I know where I know this Chile from. I'd seen it in camp. But then I just kind of kept whatever um, information I knew to myself. Then we talked about music. And we just so happened at that particular moment to be into BB and CC Winans. They were big back in the day. So we
Yeah.
talked about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I handed her a cassette because I knew giving her the cassette meant I was going to see her again because she had to return it. And
Okay.
In between that 93 period, we
Yeah.
dated. He
Okay.
was 93, I was finishing fourth. I was in fourth form. And we dated a short while until he made a tragic mistake of kissing me and I broke it off.
Ooh,
Yes,
okay.
yes, because I felt like that was going to come between me and Jesus.
Good evening. This is Dolly Ochola of Kavaya's Daughter Speaks. Today is Sunday, the 23rd of June. I'm in sunny and very, very hot New Jersey. And today I have with me Yvonne and Job Ochieng. And they are in very hot and hotter Texas, right?
That's the
So I
word.
will, yeah. So Yvonne and Joby are our friends, and they're parents to four beautiful daughters. And today we are here to talk about their family, which is a special family. It's a blended family, and I will let them introduce themselves. So I will start with you, Yvonne, because it's ladies first.
Hi, Dolly. Thank you so
Hi.
much for inviting us and creating this platform where we can share our story, especially as a blended family. My
Mm-hmm.
name is Yvonne Ochieng, and I've been married to Joby now for 14 years, but we've known each other for over 30 years,
Wow.
and we have four girls, and I'm excited to be here and just to be able to chat with you and chat into this territory waters called the blended family.
Okay.
Yes.
What about you, Joby? Tell us about yourself, and our people know you a little bit. So tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so Job, but normally go by Joby or Chiang. Out here in sunny Texas. Second time in Kavaya's Daughter Speaks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, just excited to be here today with my lovely bride, Yvonne. So you can just kind of share our story. Just be able to be an encouragement to people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about just different things, family, blended family, and just life.
Okay. So I'm going to start with Yvonne because
Uh-huh.
Job has answered this question before. Tell us something that you don't know about you.
Uh, Gosh, something you don't know about me.
Yes.
I'm very tall.
Mm-hmm. How
And
tall?
I am 5'10", but I feel like sometimes I'm 6'2".
Okay.
And what else? I turned a passion into a business, and that was my tea business.
Okay.
So I enjoy tea, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
things I did was just change the passion to become something that I could also just market it and really have a create a platform to promote Kenyan tea.
Okay.
Yeah. I struggle with my height actually. I wished I was shorter.
Oh,
Surprisingly,
okay.
yeah, yeah. That's
The
one
short
thing.
people wish they were
I do
shorter.
walk.
Taller.
I walk tall and proud, but inwardly, sometimes I wish I was just a few inches shorter.
Okay. Is it
Yeah.
a challenge to get clothes and stuff like that?
Pants,
Oh,
pants,
yes. Okay.
yes, and shoes. Because I also over the years, I'm now up to. Can't believe I can say this, but I'll say it. Size 11.
Okay.
Started off at 9.5 before pregnancy, and after 3 pregnancies, I'm up to 11. So that was also almost an incentive to not have any more kids. 'Cause
That is funny. I've heard of people who say that their shoe size grows with pregnancy.
well, mine did.
Wow. Joby, tell us something we don't know about you. Not what you told us last time. Something different.
I love tall women.
No, that one is obvious. That's obvious. That you can see. Tell us something we don't know.
It's interesting on the tall women thing, right? Because my dad was shorter than my mom, and that
Oh.
that whole dynamics for me growing up, I struggled with it. So I always found myself gravitating to dating and being around women who I considered tall.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice, nice. So now we'll start and we'll just go and I'll ask you guys, how did you meet? Anyone can take that.
I know this Chile from church. Growing up, I saw her once in '92 December, and
Okay.
I was a bunch of buddies. We had a church camp, and it was in the morning. Guys kind of getting up, just trying to get ready for the day, and she was just passing the two of her friends, and for whatever reason, I just told my friends, "See the girl in the middle, the tall one? I'll marry
Yeah.
her someday."
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I didn't see her the rest of the camp. And then a month and a half later, I meet her. She was coming from school. I was out of school. I was trying to have a conversation, and in the conversation, we talked about the church we went to, and then that's when it started coming back to me like, okay, I know where I know this Chile from. I'd seen it in camp, but then I just kind of kept whatever um, information I knew to myself. Then we talked about music, and we just so happened at that particular moment to be into BB and CC Winans. They were big back in the day, so we
Yeah.
talked about it, and
Mm-hmm.
I handed her a cassette because I knew giving her the cassette meant I was going to see her again because she had to return it.
Okay.
Well, for me, I'll say this. I don't remember meeting him in '92.
Uh-huh.
This was the Brackenhurst camp that we
Oh,
used to
Brackenhurst.
go.
I
Yeah,
remember. Yeah,
Brackenhurst
Pente. We went.
with
Yeah. Mhm.
Pente. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't remember seeing him. So I met Joby in 1993. He met me in '92. I met him in '93. And yeah, and I remember it was in a matatu. I was going home.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Kianda, and we lived in Buru.
Mm-hmm.
So he was in the matatu. I got in and he was there. He graciously agreed to carry my bag, refused to give me his seat, refused to give up his seat. So he just carried my school bag. And we started chatting. And then he decided to get off the phase 5 bus stop. He lived in phase 3. And like he said, we found that we had a lot of connections. Once I found out he went to Nairobi Pentecostal,
Mm-hmm.
and we had lots of you know how the youth group was in
Yes.
Nairobi Pentecostal. Found
Yeah.
out we had a lot of common friends, and then we also found that we listened to same similar music.
Mm-hmm.
So he told me he had, of course, the BB and CC, and I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. This is awesome. So of course, when he said he can walk me home, I was like, great, because I was planning to walk down to see a friend of mine from school. She lived in
Mm-hmm.
phase 3, and I'd have to pass his house. So I thought, oh, this would be great. We can just go from here, pass by. He gives me the cassette. He's very lucky at that point. I didn't think about keeping that cassette and disappearing. Huh? Still naive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how we met. That's how we met, and our friendship developed from there. I actually, it's so funny, and I forgot to bring it out here, but I actually have a post, like a wall art he gave me in 1993.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was looking at it this morning and I meant to bring it so I could just kind of show you. It's something he had made and he had written a little note at the back just telling me to lean
Nice.
on. It was from, I think it was Psalms 34:17. It was a little wall art he had gotten a friend of, he must have been because it was not him. I'm pretty sure it's not him who made it. But the
Mm-hmm.
back he had written on it, just a word of encouragement as I went through school and life. So it
Nice.
was really cool. It was
Nice.
really
So,
cool.
hey,
Yeah.
we'll just go with 92, 93,
Yeah,
92
92, 93
93.
time frame.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now, fast forward,
Yeah.
you guys have met while you're in high school, and then you come to the US. Can you briefly tell us how you
So
guys
so
reconnected?
in between that 93 period, we
Yeah.
dated. He
Okay.
was, yeah, so we dated. So as we started talking, that friendship progressed to where we started dating. And 93, I was finishing fourth. I was in fourth form.
Mm-hmm.
And
Which is 12th grade for those who
yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
great. And we dated a short while until he made a tragic mistake of kissing me, and I broke it off.
Ooh,
Yes,
okay.
yes, because I felt like that was gonna come between me and Jesus. So so he had to be dumped. So
Oh, the
yeah,
kiss that caused the damp, huh?
yeah, the kiss that nailed it. It nailed.
Okay.
Yeah. So so when I finished by the time I was finishing fourth form and going into after fourth form, I went into St. Mary's to do the IB program.
Mm-hmm.
He was embarking on, no, he left, you left in 95, right? Because
Mhm.
I left in 96. So then we were still conversing, we were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But
we
not
were still,
dating.
it's so funny because even when we broke up,
Mm-hmm.
we were still friends. We were friends. We would talk once in a while if we ran into each other. But
Mm-hmm.
Joby has always had that demeanor. He's the kind of guy you'll tell your secrets even before you realize you've opened up and you've told him everything, even when he's that guy. He's that guy. You just sit down and you'll find yourself really opening up to him. And that's one thing I've really admired and been very attracted to in Joby. He's such a gentle spirit. He's so welcoming. It's something else. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, the
Yeah.
only thing about it, I was
Yes.
told to be, hey, we're just gonna be friends, right? So I just became the friend, right?
Okay.
And it's funny. Even at that moment, yes, it hurt, but back on my mind, I used to tell myself, there's not gonna be any other person who's good enough for this Chile. So okay, I'm just gonna ride the wave until we see what happens.
Until yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So fast forward, you move to the US and then you get together again. So you broke it off, and then now everybody is living their separate lives, and
Mhm.
then you move to the US, right? So how did you guys get together again after the
So we kept in touch. Even when I
Mhm.
moved to the US, we still kept in touch. There's a brief period there where she visited where I first, I started out life.
Mhm.
And as life would have it, because I'm still just a friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not looking to see anything happen, even though deep down inside, I wanted something to happen, but I knew that I was not going to push into anything. So as life would have it, I move, and then she moves a year later
Mm-hmm.
uh, in different states. And there's a brief period there. She visits, one of her spring breaks, comes and visits. She came in to kind of do some spring break jobos so she could make money for school.
Mhm.
Uh, and then when she went back to school, I stayed back. And I think the next conversation was, hey, we've just conceived and I'm going to be a dad. And, I think this changes the dynamics of our friendship, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember some of the things we talked about when we were younger that, being in that space that now in this new season where I'm going to be a dad and having to change how everything around me had to change. From the things I was able to do, the things I couldn't do, everything around me was changing. But she was the first person, I didn't even tell my immediate family. She's the first person I called up and said, "Hey, I'm going to be a dad, right? And here's the steps I'm going to make. I'm going to go into this. I'm going to give it my best shot." Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's how life for me as a dad started. And I think with that announcement, so kind of like a separation of us kind of happening, which it also felt very permanent, because I knew
Mm-hmm.
this was it. Any ideas I'd had about being with this Chile, that was done. It's over. Yeah.
Okay. And so, Yvonne, you get the call that Job is
Yes.
expecting a child. So, in your head, was that like, okay, that closes that chapter and all the hopes, or how?
Yes, yes, it did. Because, then I was what, 23, 22,
Okay.
pretty young, and then he, um, I was like, oh wow, okay. And then, he's like, he's going to settle down, he's going to get married and everything. And for me, I was like, oh, that's it. That's a closed chapter. It never crossed my mind. At that moment, I was like, the finality, knowing especially there's a child who's going to come into the picture, for
Yes.
me was just for me at that moment, there was that finality.
Mm-hmm.
So I just knew, if ever we see each other or we meet, or it will have to have been a happenstance, a coincidence,
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
but and we can still maintain a friendship, because we were very good friends. We've always been good friends. We were very, very good friends. So for me, that chapter closed in terms of any like romantic or deeper relationship with him from that perspective, because at that point I'm like, you've told me you're settling down, you're going to get married and everything. So, I don't want to be a hindrance. I don't want to be, that's a decision you've made and it's important. At that
Mm-hmm.
point, if it's important to you, it's important to you, and so be it. And granted, it's not like we were dating, but we were good friends. And even the fact that he called me and told me that he was going to be settling down, that he was getting married, that he was going to have a child, for me, it was that, having that deep respect also for that friendship we had, and to give him that space and just be like, hey, I want to make sure there's that space. I'm his friend, but that's it. It stops there. There'll be nothing else, because he has now a new life and a new family that he's going to be responsible for. And that for me was actually it. I was very sure we were done. I would not
Mm-hmm.
probably see him again. Yeah. So my life was just gonna continue from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, fast forward a couple of years later, things don't work out, and so who makes the call to who to tell who that Job is single? Like, how did that happen?
Actually, no call was made, right? Because
Okay.
there's also that stigma that now I had a failed relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And this stigma is kind of stemmed from the things that I would hear growing up. I had
Mm-hmm.
friends who were from single families. I had friends whose parents had gone through the similar situation. But then in the circles, the adults in the room would talk very negatively about it. And
Mm-hmm.
what's happening is, as children, you pick up these little nuances. But at that particular moment, I didn't make anything out of it until now. I was living that life. And it's almost like a flood of everything I picked up along the way. I'm a divorced guy. I'm a single dad. Those things came. And I knew my life was over, because I knew how those parents or people in those situations were talked about. So I didn't make a call until, and then that time also, there was no internet, there was, some of these things we didn't have. And I think
Mm-hmm.
in that season when when I was trying to make my relationship work, we lost contact. Phones changed,
Oh.
moved.
Mhm.
I
Uh-huh.
didn't know until one day there's a site that came up online, graduates.com, right? Where
Ah.
we find people, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started looking up people, and then I remember the school she had gone to. So I looked her up, and her email came up. And I just sent an email. I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, it's been a long time, just want to check on you. How's things going? I'm good. Here's my number. This is if you want to talk." Because at that point, I have no idea what has been happening in her life. Um, it had been a long time, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
3, 4 years. So it's in that site then we reconnected. But then there's also that fear because I'm like, you suddenly start to realize I'm not good enough for any. For me, it was like I was not good enough for any woman who was single and hadn't walked through my story or my journey type of stuff. So it was
Mm-hmm.
very hard to call her up and say, "Hey, let's get this thing going." For
Mhm.
me, my mindset at that time was, whoever I date, I'm gonna have to date somebody who has a child. So then that way we can kind of figure things out. If the schedules kind of come up when I don't have my child, um, we can kind of set it up that way. The dynamics going to be the same. If I'm not able to make it to a date, they kind of understand. So the whole trying to date a single chick for me just didn't exist at that particular moment.
Mm.
Yeah.
So Yvonne, how did you finally decide this is a relationship worth giving a chance?
So this was not until maybe so this was maybe around 2009.
Okay.
And even in between that time, he had come to visit me in 2007,
Mm-hmm.
and I had gone to Ohio in 2003.
Mm-hmm.
So, but in those two instances, I never really thought, I'd never seen myself being with someone who had a child,
Mm-hmm.
let alone or someone who had been divorced. That for me was not something I was considering. So even when we were visiting, I was being very cautious because I didn't want to send the wrong message, because
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in that frame of mind to think, oh, I would consider a man who's been divorced or a man who has a child. It just did not cross my mind. It was not something I saw was going to be part of my story.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I also recognized the challenges I was having in my relationships, seemed to be, and then it was around 2008. I was in this church, and there was this program called Celebrate Recovery that I took. It was about a 10-month program in church. And it was in that space, where I think I also was in that place where I was older, in my mid 30s, and I'm like, I really want to settle down, but I recognize I'm the common denominator in my failed relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to figure out what's going on. What are my habits, hangups, all those? What are the things about me that maybe I haven't articulated, so that I can be in a place of healing, a place of mending, and putting things together in a way that makes me more of a complete person.
Okay.
Just really
Mm-hmm.
identify those areas in me that I felt it was just something God was wanting me to address,
Okay.
and for whatever reason, for whatever reason at that point. But now I recognize it was, I had gotten to a place where my desire to want to settle down and get married, I needed to be in a place where I was whole, I was healed,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from part of my from my brokenness,
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I did through that program was also, after the program, and just recognizing, okay, fine, God, I've struggled with my relationships. And I realized too, from that process, that if there was an area in my life I never submitted to God, was relationships. I felt like that was an area I could do very well on my own, but I was
Mm-hmm.
not getting the results I wanted. So it was in that space that of total submission, and I don't know why I got this thought. I don't know whether it was a book. I can't even remember what transpired for me to come and when I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get a spreadsheet and I'm going to write out the names of my former boyfriends and put a pros and cons and deal breakers, what I can work with, what I cannot work with. And when I looked at that list, it almost sounds like I had a whole lot. No, it wasn't a lot, but kind of, I don't know,
Yes.
But anyway, and Job was on that list. I added Job, even though I knew, he's divorced, deal breaker, single
Yeah.
father, deal breaker. I don't even know why he's there, but he was there. I mean, he was
Yeah.
someone I knew from a very long time.
Yes.
Sorry. And when I looked at that list of the men, or what I was looking for in a man, Job
Yes.
fit the bill, you know and I
Okay.
remember I really struggled with that, because I'm like, but God, and for me, I'm thinking, I don't want a single dad, I don't want a divorce. That's not it. I don't want that. But over and over, as I looked at it, as I prayed about it, as I was just in that space, I was always gravitating back. When I look at that list, I'm like, when I look at this spreadsheet and what it's looking back, when it looks back at me, this is what I'm seeing is this is a person I should pursue. So I know I called my mom, we talked a little bit, I was like, just kind of trying to throw all these ideas because it reached a point where my mom was like, right about now, West African Mzungu, settle down. you know so and of course her concern too, she's like, well, do you know what this means for you, because there's, if you decide this, if you're thinking that this would be someone you would consider to settle down with, are you ready to start off as a mother, and are you ready to marry someone who's been married before? So those were kind of thoughts I really had to just really allow myself to just marinate in them, and just seek wisdom, and just be able to be very intentional about settling down. So it was in 2003 9, sorry, when we started talking. Now, because I kind of had an idea this was the direction I wanted to go,
Okay.
and or that as we're talking, that he is actually a viable candidate, you
Right.
know and that's what we just started doing, I mean. But one of the things too was I also wanted to be able to make sure, because now because I knew there was a child in the picture too, and at that time she was about 11, 12, is that I'm also gelling with a child, like we are gelling, we're it's just not Job and I, because Job is not coming by himself. It's Job and there's a child in the picture. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was
so
just
that was
wondering.
important to me. So
Mhm.
as we started visiting one another,
Okay.
it was that time of, okay, he also created a space for me and her to be in to have a kind of even while he's there, he's just, he's kind of in the background, so that we could try, we could have a time to foster a friendship and a relationship in that space, and we did. I mean, for me, I knew I needed to also feel comfortable, because
Yes.
one of the things I had said was, if if I'm not able to establish a relationship with his daughter, then I don't want to pursue this, because I know how, there was a level of maturity and understanding that this could become very difficult, because I cannot separate Job from his child. I just cannot. It's just
Yes.
not going to work. So, and also, if the child had a problem with me,
Yes,
and
that's
just
true.
could not, just did not, I didn't want to be a hindrance, and I didn't want to start off into a relationship or marriage or be settled with someone who a child has a problem with me. So those
Okay.
were very, very important. So over the course of that year, we just, we established, having that opportunity to visit Ohio, to meet her, to spend time together, and him being very, just really taking a seat back, so that we could have that opportunity to establish a relationship, was really important. So
And Job, when did you decide to introduce your daughter to Yvonne? And I know that she had seen Yvonne at least here and there, but then, or this is a different, the relationship has taken a different turn. When did you decide it was safe for
So,
you to introduce your daughter?
so the time when she turned, when she was 5,
Okay.
uh, Yvonne did visit again, and we had a whole lot of people from church who were kind of hanging out. So she had seen Yvonne with the other
Mm-hmm.
friends, right? But there was never really that definition of who that was, other than she was my friend.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with, and in my head, remember, I'm not seeing this ever go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even defining what the friendship looks like, other than this is someone I dated before. Now we're friends, and there's nothing. And there are people who struggle, like, what do you mean there's nothing? She's a beautiful woman. I was like, there's really literally nothing, because I knew the context of, and as a man, I know where I'm going to be rejected. So, and I know the situation is going to get me rejected. So, why am I going to put
Put
myself?
yourself. Mm-hmm.
So even, a little bit of a context. So when I'd go home, I'd call her up and say, I'm going home because I knew I'd see her mom. And, whatever she wanted to send me with, I would take it to mom. And even conversations with mom, she never came up until maybe one conversation, which was interesting. Me and mom are sitting, we're hanging out. And, she asked me, she goes like, hey, so have you ever thought about your friend? I was like, yeah, but I don't see it. So remember, this is now my mom-in-law telling me about her daughter. And I'm just like, yeah, I already know the conversation, the prior conversation we've had, that doesn't match up. So even in that '09, even as these things are happening, I'm still not sold, right? I'm just like, yeah, let me kind of keep a safe distance. But now when things started happening where we're talking, what I did, I went and talked to my daughter and her mom
Mm.
because I knew this was going to change dynamics.
Mhm.
I had a conversation with them and I said, I'm first, the conversation even before Yvonne came in the picture, I'd been thinking about relocating. Wherever I was just like, now it's time for me to go to a different location. I just want to go to a different state. Just to kind of almost, I felt like it was time for me to start over again, but I didn't know where I was going to go. So when
Mhm.
I started seeing the dynamics here changing, I was like, maybe that could be the place I'm going to go to, but let me not quite say it until I'm sure this is going to happen. So when I started getting confident that this was actually the direction things were going, then I
Mhm.
had a conversation with my daughter and her mom. And I think one, it was more out of respect. And then two, also because the dynamics were going to change, because of the way we parented, we did a shared parent. We created our own schedule. Nobody was telling us how to create it. We created what worked for us. We
Mhm.
created a space that she could pick up the phone, I could pick up the phone and say, I'm available for this child. And we even had spaces where we did stuff together so that this child could still have us together and see how we could be civil together. So
Mhm.
now, because me moving out of state was going to change that, I think I owed them that conversation because even for me, I didn't know what to expect, right? I
Okay.
knew the dynamics going to change, but I didn't know what to expect. So that is when, for my daughter, she connected and she knew, oh, okay, this is maybe why I've been seeing Yvonne a little bit more often now, right?
Okay.
So yeah.
Oh, okay. So Yvonne, did Job's daughter ask you? She's also your daughter, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying in this context, did she ask you, "Are you going to marry my mom?" Like how was that? Like how? I'm just imagining that you are not mom, and you're this new person in dad's life, and
Yeah.
you're trying to kind of win her over, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you're trying to do. So how was that for you?
We never really had that conversation where she ever asked me that question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now when I look back,
Mm-hmm.
I also realized there was the naivety on my part of
Mm-hmm.
not really, when you don't understand the dynamics of blended families, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that maybe could have been a question to ask even a child, what do you think, or how do you think, um, what's your thoughts about, me and your dad settling down?
Mm-hmm.
In that space where I was, without having those kind of any context or any idea or just the naivety, that question never came up. So I think just from the feeling like our relationship as in this state where we are in right now in '09 is going well according to me, and my assumption, and my assumption was it's also going well according to her, because Job never came and said, "Oh, my daughter is struggling with you," or "My daughter has a problem with you." I think
Mm-hmm.
the assumptions were made, "Oh, she's okay, green light, everything, we're good to go."
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
never crossed my mind to ask those questions. It just never did, you
And
Mm-hmm.
know?
the reason why that even didn't come up is because
Mm-hmm.
after a certain period of being with this child and you start to see her grow up, conversations we used to have with my daughter was, I'm going to settle down again. I I had been stating that quite a bit because remember, for me, Vaughn is a far removed. That was an old childhood dream that just never came to fruition. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to have this conversation. I just didn't want to. It was hard. Even though I struggled inside of me, coming from a big family, I, I wanted somebody for her, but I just could not find the right person for it. So I didn't, so in her head, she didn't know that. But fast forward, when I proposed, I asked her to help me propose to Yvonne. And
Ah,
by that time, there'd been a little bit more communication, a little bit more contact, and just kind of having these
mhm.
conversations. And in my proposal, one of the things, I had an idea that she helped me create that idea.
Okay, so you involved her from the beginning.
Involved it from the beginning. But then to Yvonne's thing is, but that question, in hindsight, I should have asked. I think there's an assumption. And, for her, I don't think I gave her room. Now, in hindsight, the things that I know now, where this
Mm-hmm.
conversation should have been had, even just the four of us, right?
Mm.
Because her mom is going to allow her child to be in somebody else's space who she doesn't know quite well.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Dynamics are going to change. I mean, we don't think that, and I take it a little bit from a step back from the African culture. My grandparents were polygamous, but when
Mm.
you see how those things worked out, it was more of when grandpa, both sides had a new wife. Okay, everybody called her mom and all these things. So I'm thinking she's African, so that's how it's going to go.
Mm.
Forgetting I live in a different time, I live in a different culture.
Mhm.
It's totally
Mm-hmm.
different. So those are
Mm-hmm.
assumptions, like Yvonne was saying, you don't think about it. You just go
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of assumptions.
And also, even though, let's say it's still in the African cultural context, it doesn't mean that that was the right thing to do, to
Mhm.
impose a new person and tell your children to call the person mom.
Yeah.
Thinking
Yes.
about it, it's really not fair
Yes.
to,
Mhm.
because a mother is not just anything, right? So
Mhm.
now, did you introduce? I know you spoke to your daughter's mom,
Mhm.
but did you introduce Yvonne to your daughter's mom? Because I'm also thinking, if I'm in her shoes, if this person is going to be taking care of my child is going to be sleeping in this person's house, I need to know that who this person is, at least, right? Did you do that?
So no, regrettably no. And
Okay.
here's how I even think about it. As you're asking the question, I said to process it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear of all the baby mama dramas. Not that she was a dramatic mom.
Mm-hmm.
She always assumed. So here's the thing I'm struggling with. Finally, I get this chick.
Mm.
You think I'm gonna bring anything around her? Sabotage thing? No. There's more
So it
to
was fear. It was
that.
your fear was the motivation for
Yeah.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna sabotage this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's how and you start to rationalize the fear, right? They seem to be okay. I haven't
Yeah.
heard anything. Um, Me and my daughter's mom, it's not like we're crazy. We have a civil relationships. But in the back of my mind, I think, yeah, when the two women come together, yes, whatever sparks can fly, I'm not ready for that. So let's build the course.
So then you're keeping them as separate as possible, right? Because you have the fear.
Separate enough
Yeah.
because I know there's gonna be some kind of something has to happen,
Mm-hmm.
but separate enough where everyone is safe, including myself.
But as you're saying, in knowing what you know today, that was not the
Mhm.
right way to go about it.
Absolutely not. I think I should have given everyone involved in this situation an opportunity to decide whether good or bad, because the final decision is going to be with me anyway.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But I should have given everybody, and even if for Yvonne, I should have given her that fair uh, opportunity to be around these two women who had been in my life all this time when
Mhm.
absent, to also just kind of get their view, right? Because even if you go, whether it's good or bad, I need uh, the the final decision is going to rest between me and Yvonne,
Yeah.
Yes.
but still allow them to have that, especially for my daughter. If I could do it again, I would give her that space and have those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add on to that, and that's why I say hindsight is always 2020.
Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
agree. I think it would have been great to start off having where we had an opportunity to meet, but at the same time, of course, you also have to read the room. You know what I mean? You have
Yes.
to be able to read the environment. Is it? And for me, I think there was. I also came in, thinking, okay, fine. I want to make sure, I mean, and it never really crossed my mind like, oh, it would be a good idea to meet her mom, before. I just, it never crossed my mind. But then there's also that assumption of, hey, maybe someone might not be, someone could do something to me. So I also was not proactive
Mm-hmm.
in wanting to really know the person, because one, I'm thinking, well, we're in two different states, you know, um, so it's not like, now when I look back as a mom, I
Mm-hmm.
recognize I can understand the fears one
Yes.
can have, thinking, where am I sending my child? Who is this
Yes.
person? What does she believe in? What does she, who is
Mm-hmm.
she? What is her, in Swahili we say utu. What is she about?
Yes.
So
Yes.
now when I look back, I realize those are things that would have been very, I think, even from going forward into now this new relationship, a new marriage, that's moving forward, and there's this child who's also going to be part of who's going to be part of the family, that there is an understanding. And I think because when there's lack of knowledge, you open up, there's now room for assumptions. And most of the time, it's always
Exactly.
worst case scenarios. You're thinking
Uh-huh.
in worst case scenarios, like, oh, will my child be affected? Will she be mean to my child? Will she treat my child differently? Will my child be safe around her? So I can understand that now, being a mom and not having been the person I was then, because those were really not questions or thoughts I thought about at all. They were
Yeah,
just,
because you didn't
it
have
was
the
not my world.
experience.
It
Yes.
was not my
And then
story.
plus
Yeah.
culturally, that's not something we had talked about. And blended
Yeah.
families were a new concept, and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and
So
also, like, when I think about it, like, just like Job, my grandfather on my father's side was polygamous too. So
mhm.
even when there were rumblings, everyone tried to keep it very, you know even though you knew there was the waters underneath the smooth surface were rumble, there was a lot of currents, underground currents going on, because
Yes.
we were not put in a space where you could we don't have that sometimes ability to ask or to question, or to you see things and you just keep quiet, because we were not in an environment where we're encouraged to talk, or just to express maybe some observations we made. So I think
Mhm.
there was, having seen, okay, oh, everything is fine and dandy here, but even though you knew, okay, I know there's some rumblings going on, but because everything looks good in the surface,
Mhm.
same thing here. I'm gonna get married to him. He's got a child. you know Never thought, oh, it would be great to meet the mom, or it would be good to connect, so that she can know who her daughter is going to be, and she'll be entrusting her child, especially when her child is coming to another state, and she
Mhm.
probably will be here for extended periods of time, like during the summer holidays, whenever we would have her here, or during the spring breaks, or whenever there was a weekend we could get her here.
Mhm.
There was never that thought that crossed my mind. We just never did.
So
Yeah.
now I understand that one of the big changes. So Joby was already a dad, so he knew what it was to be a dad,
Hmm.
but he also knew what it was to be a dad with his ex-wife, then as a single dad for
Hmm.
a good period of time, actually
Yeah.
a good number of years, and now he was going to be a dad married to Yvonne, right? So how did that transition take place? How was it for you? Because you became an instant mother. There was no pregnancy and going through the stages, talking to
Yeah.
people, what does your child do? You became an instant mother.
Yeah.
How did that work? And Job, what did you do to help Yvonne?
So
So,
if answers it, right?
mm,
Something across my mind, right? Even in that time, just even before Yvonne comes to the picture, I realized now in hindsight, what I knew how to be a dad was to provide. So,
Okay.
so as long as I provided, and I made sure things were in place, I was handling my duty as a man and as a dad.
Mm.
With a girl child, and I think it's also with a boy child, I did not connect emotionally because I didn't even know how to connect emotionally. So I was thinking I was the greatest dad because nothing could go wrong. I sacrificed everything I could, but I missed the connection part. So
Mm.
because this kind of carries over to what Yvonne is going to answer as far
Yes.
as.
Okay.
So when so one of the things that was very important to me was I really uh one of the things that really endeared me and attracted me to Job
Mm-hmm.
was seeing his relationship with his daughter,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing how he was such a present father. But all this we have to remember is also based on what I'm just seeing, just hearing what he's saying now and then what I was seeing. So I was thinking, so so for that, being in that space, I was like, oh my goodness, this, I can see I can see myself having children with this man because I can see how the relationship he has with his daughter, and I would love for to be able to have my children to have that kind of relationship. And then even when we got married, Nicole, our oldest was on our wedding,
Mm-hmm.
and we involved her very much. She was very much also involved in our wedding, and so there wasn't much thought as to what will this look like, because I think there was also the element of knowing that she was not going to stay with us physically because Job was moving to Texas, and of course when she came back she was going to go and finish her schooling in Ohio. And then so there wasn't really, in hindsight when I look back, there wasn't really much thought as to what that would look like. But then I did, as of course when she was with us, one of the things that of course we started off the relationship, just like anything else, like a child, you don't know each other, you're beginning to learn one another. I recognized how she struggled with calling me mom, you
Mm-hmm.
know
Mm-hmm.
and I could really sense that it was very difficult for her to say mom. So one day, we just I set some time aside, and I just we talked, and I explained to her, because I think there was that I was in that space as I noticed that, and I also just really was able to think through it, recognized, I can see how someone can have a hard time, suddenly, it's also, for me, it feels strange for someone to be calling me mom, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
not biologically mom, but it was also strange to hear that being, I'm being called that.
And she was
And then
12
also
at
when I
that
saw the,
time.
sorry.
And she was 12 at that time
Yeah,
too.
she was about
She was not
12
like a
years
little
old.
baby, you
So
know what
it's
I
not
mean?
like a
Like,
little child, like a 2 year old or a 1 year old. This is now someone who's transitioning from childhood into young adult life, she's tweening and into the teenage life. So even the way your parenting is changing, now that I look back, that I have a 12-year-old, the way you talk with them, the way, the conversations are changing, because you're no longer dealing with a child. This is someone who's transitioning from childhood into womanhood eventually,
yes, yes.
so in that space, when I recognized how difficult it was, I could see she was really struggling with that word. We spoke, and I just told her, I want you to call me what you're most comfortable with. I want you to be feel comfortable. I want you to think through it, and you let me know. If you're not, and I understand whatever name you want to call me, I'm
Mm,
okay. You know, and and so she came back and she's like, at this place right now, I want to call you Yvonne, and I
mm,
was okay with it. And all
okay.
I just was like, as long as we have mutual respect for one another,
Mm-hmm.
we are able to, you respect me, as long as you know that I'm a third parent in this picture,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not trying to take your mother's place. I'm not trying. That's not something that I am interested in doing, and I want to, because I cannot fill those shoes. You
Mm-hmm.
know, all I can do is just be. I am I'm the third. I'm a parental. I'm part of the parental unit.
Yes.
But if Yvonne is what you're comfortable calling me, so be it. I'm okay with it. 'Cause, I don't feel. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me. I'm. I. I don't feel. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me. I'm. I. I don't feel. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me. I'm. I. I. I don't feel. I'm not. It doesn't hurt me. Yeah. So, and I could really even just tell the demeanor change because that's a lot to expect from a young child,
Yes.
and later on as we had the conversations, the struggle was, feeling like they're losing the loyalty towards their biological mom is shifting,
Mm-hmm.
that word is so strong. It's so, so
It
strong,
is.
that, there was that struggle, that internal struggle going on in her head, and for her to share and say that it was a struggle because she felt she was letting her real mother down, and she felt like
Yes.
she was shifting allegiances or loyalties from her mom, her biological mom, whom she's known from birth,
Mm-hmm.
versus and me, who she's now coming into her picture at 12 years old, you
Yeah.
know
Mm-hmm.
and so and just back up, which I feel is very, very important, is
Mm-hmm.
when as we're getting ready to get married, we went through premarital counseling. But
Okay.
one of the things I recognize that is really important for anyone who is in a situation like ours, blended, where someone is coming in with a child or both of you are coming in with a child, is getting mentorship from people who are in the same exact situation as you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because in that space, they'll ask questions that another a mentor or counselor that is not in your position may not know to ask,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes.
that in that space you have an opportunity to think through things. You're able to learn, and grow and be more prepared to step into a blended family situation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look back, I realized the naivety I had stepping into this space without any proper counseling, without any proper guidelines, without any, and in that time too, never thought to read a book about blended families, just never thought, you're just thinking,
Things
oh,
will
it's
work
gonna
out.
be, yeah, everything will work out. It's all kumbaya, we'll be fine, you
Yes.
know? It's when you step in and you realize, oh, hold up, now this is different. Now there
Mm-hmm.
are all these dynamics. It's just not Job and I, it's Job, Yvonne, and there's a child. So
Mm-hmm.
even decisions that are being made, which my assumption was, oh, suddenly you're like, oh, we can't make that decision. Oh, or we can't do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never
So,
had
for
to go.
example, if because you said you had her during the summer, so let's say
Yeah.
you decide you want to go to Mexico for vacation. Now you either have to ask the mom, can
Yes.
we go with our daughter to Mexico, or you have to ask the mom, can you stay with the daughter for this week, even though we're the ones who are supposed to have her? Yes. So it's not just
Exactly.
the two of you. Yes.
And then also when we thought, okay, we can just go the two of us, I struggled with the guilt of feeling like I'm leaving someone out.
Yes.
Even though it was like, even like during, and even, and I know also Job struggled with that, like, I don't want her to hear that we went and we didn't go with her,
Mm-hmm.
just no, that's what I'm saying. These small, small things that you're suddenly like, okay, fine, also recognizing, okay, fine, because now there is a child, but she's not physically in the house. We have to make sure, okay, our budget includes travel, either from a monthly budget, you have money that's been set aside for either the child is coming down or job is going up. So you're seeing all these things. You're like, okay, I hadn't even thought about this. Now
Mm-hmm.
you have to be like, okay, fine, because you want to make sure, for me also, it was very important to know that their relationship was gonna still continue, being, that they're still able to foster that relationship. I never wanted to be the person who is holding back, or feel like I'm gonna be say it's gonna be said that I try to come between them. I was very extremely sensitive about that.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely. It really, I was like, okay, whatever, I want to make sure that now that this situation has come, all these things have to be factored in. If there's a weekend, maybe you want to do something, oh no, this is the weekend he's going, or this is the weekend she's coming, so okay, we have to shift things. So these small, small things that we never thought about before I was married, never thought about that would become it just, I mean, when I look back, I was so naive. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just didn't think anything outside yourself. you
Mm-hmm.
know
Not even a little selfish. So
no,
Job,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
so
So Joby, how did you guys handle discipline? Because now this is your child, it's your flesh and blood.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know how I feel about somebody else disciplining my child. So, and I know, yes, you're in love with Yvonne, she's your wife. How did you guys handle discipline? And did you involve your child's mother? Or was Yvonne saying, hey, you wait until your dad comes? Or did she have the authority to discipline?
So
I
as
see
much,
Yvonne laughing.
so much as we talked about that, even with uh, my daughter's mom, that,
Okay.
that conversation of, that first conversation saying, hey, I'm going to settle down, I'm moving out of state, whatever the case is, you realize that's a lot of information you've thrown at someone.
Mm.
And when you throw that information, if somebody still needs time to process, my question then should have been, do you need time to process, and when can we talk about it again? I
Mm.
thought, since I've said it, I'm good. Well, let's
Mm,
next thing. And one of the parts of the conversation was discipline. We are now going to be the parents. We're going to talk about it. But I really thank God that the sensitivity that Yvonne had
mm,
helped fill in the gaps of the things I didn't. Because, like you said, in my perspective, I'm in love with this chick, so it should be good. It's going to be nice. She's going to be an instant mom. For me, I'm thinking, what's going to be hard in that? Because I've seen this in our polygamous family line. So, but then I also realize now in hindsight that even in those polygamous family lines, nobody took time to ask the children involved how they felt about it.
mm-hmm.
Those conversations never really happened. So I was just repeating the same cycle, but just in a different form. Um, and I know you also asked, part of the question was, how did I help Yvonne become a parent? I just thought it was going to be automatic. You're just going to know how to do it. I'll play the dad role, you play the mom role. The only difference part of it was now in my head, I had somebody's going to make her hair, all this girly stuff. I don't have to worry about it.
You didn't have to worry about that, huh?
Oh, me, I'm going to continue providing. And, but then here's the biggest mistake I made. When it came to decisions about our daughter, I didn't consult Yvonne to
Mm,
get up with her mom. And so this started to create a vacuum, which I wasn't aware of. I didn't know how it affected her. I didn't even think it existed. And then over time, you know, s- with Yvonne sitting in the sidelines, it's only one day she said, I feel left out. And it wasn't something that Nicole's mom kind of prevented. Oh, you know, it wasn't something that happened, right? It was my lack of trying to bring people together, my lack of understanding the dynamics of this relationship, my lack of even just pausing and asking the question that should have been asked for, from everybody involved.
mm-hmm.
So as years went by, you're trying so hard to make this family work, but there's those gaps that you've created in this relationship, the parents not coming together to talk about the welfare of this child, who first did not ask to be in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So recognizing that and having a conversation and saying, how is this affecting your life? I'm thinking I know everything. And my knowledge only goes as far as I can pay for this, I can buy this,
Mhm.
I'm around you, I can do the little things I can do in those part-time moments, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's literally affecting other people. Remember, as a man, there's certain things I realize now that I'll never know what women who birth children feel and understand. For women, you get to carry that child from conception. For men, we
Yeah.
wait to carry that child when they're out in the world. So all the biological things that you're feeling inside,
Mm.
I can read about it. I can pretend I can try and understand, but the truth is I'll never understand.
Mm.
Most I can see is the ultrasound. When the baby kicks, I can see how the belly moves.
Yeah.
But you guys carry the emotions, the feeding. So that connection, I thought I knew it. Oh, because, yeah, we've done this. But lack of knowing that prevented me from asking the right questions to this young girl who's been thrown into another whirlwind of a relationship again, having to
Mm-hmm.
figure out, okay, now I have three parents. That's something I have to talk to my friends about. I didn't even know those things. I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
everybody's is kumbaya, everything is good. But it's in hindsight that you start to look back and just, for me, I was like, yeah, I was naive, lack of knowledge and understanding, and even to some extent, I take responsibility for being unfair for
Mm.
these people in this relationship. Because
Mm-hmm.
think about it, I'm the common denominator,
Yes, you are. Yes.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
didn't take a step back to ask myself or even ask the people I've brought together in this blended family situation. What does that look like? What are you feeling? I didn't even know how to ask Yvonne, who, yeah, we're friends and everything, but I don't know how to ask her how she feels. Part of me was like, as long as from the outside it looked good,
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
yeah,
So when she told you she felt left out, were you surprised?
yes, I was
Okay.
surprised. But then it gave me an opportunity to now ask myself, what do I do better?
Mm.
Okay.
Because I got into this relationship and told myself, I've been a dad, I've been around a child. So there's some aspect of parenting I think I know, but I've never parented with somebody full time.
Mm.
So everything I know, let me try and erase that or try and relearn it
Mm-hmm.
and be open to being teachable so that I can learn the new ways of making some decisions. Because I think the relationship Nicole's mom and I had was, there's some decisions we made independently if it was just for them, right? But now in a marriage situation, there's all these things. It's just not a financial thing. We have to make a decision as we budget, like Yvonne was describing earlier on. But there's also emotional stuff that we have to kind of
Mhm.
worry about, right? Because when you have two women, now she's growing. We both have never been around a child who's growing in their teenage years. What does that look like, right? How is the communication style going to be different? What do I, as a dad, need to come in and understand? So the whole lot of different things that we're learning. But even in that space, I couldn't learn because I didn't know what was the right lesson, what's the wrong lesson, what is things to even just sit back and say,
Mhm.
all I knew was, okay, now I have in the parental unit, there are two mothers who can help at all times. So me, I can kind of just ride the wave.
Back. So you won't tell us. So you felt left us. Can you tell us why you felt left out?
Well, because a lot of decisions were being made and I was just being informed after. So so it started feeling like I was an afterthought, like I was, literally like a third wheel. I felt like, when you're on a date and then the other
Mm-hmm.
person brings a second person, you bring your
Yes.
friend and they
Yeah.
just feel like they are floating. I literally felt like I was floating. But now when I also look back, I also realize I think because of those assumptions that were made about, oh, I don't want to get myself involved with, especially being too close to the our daughter's mom, because I don't know what that would look like, whether it's get into beef. Why, I don't even know. But I know I also kind of kept a distance, and maybe it's also because I felt like because we're also in different states,
Mm-hmm.
it's easier. So there wasn't any part for me. I was very hesitant about that. But now, but then at the same time, I started realizing I was being informed of decisions that had already been made. And it's more like, I'm just letting you know, or I'm notifying you this is what's going to happen. So over time, I started realizing I struggled with that and I had a problem with that. So that's when I brought it to his attention, like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really beginning to feel like a third wheel here. I just feel like all I do is, and I'm an active listener. That's all I do is I just listen and I'm told what's going to happen. So, and I started realizing I was
Mm-hmm.
beginning to build a form of kind of resentment. Like, is that what all this is all about? I just feel like I'm just here. I'm writing. I'm just here. So I realized
Mm-hmm.
me saying it was important because I was beginning to feel a certain kind of way, and I recognized that if I did not address it or bring it to Job's attention, that it could potentially become a problem. And then now going back to the question you'd asked about the discipline, I, Nicole was Nicole wasn't coming in as a 2-year-old. She was a girl coming in as a 12-year-old. So,
Which is more
just,
difficult, actually.
yeah, very, very difficult, because now you're dealing with someone who, I mean, it was not like you can just tell a child, go sit there or go do that, or something. So
Mm-hmm.
I really struggled with the discipline part, in terms of administering discipline. Even when I know Job had said, I want you to know that you have you can, administer discipline, and whether that's going to be like, hey, you can't do that, or but I struggled with it. I really, really struggled with it. I felt like I just absolutely should not be the one to do it. But if there was an issue, I could bring it up to him,
Mm-hmm.
and then, if it's something that the mom needed to be involved, then we would, notify, make sure he would notify the mom at that point. So that part of discipline was where, if I would still notify her if there was something that I felt that, say, I didn't like that, or I didn't appreciate that. But for me to administer it, because we're also dealing with a person who was getting ready to go into their teens, it was
Yes.
something that, it was just easier, for me. I felt more comfortable addressing it with Joe, bringing it to his attention.
Mm-hmm.
If the mom needed to be involved in a situation, then she would be involved in that situation. A lot of times, in those beginning years, those early years of our marriage, it would just be, the communication was between them, and then he would let me know. But as years progressed, and especially when she moved to come to college here in Texas, now it really brought us to a place where we realized we couldn't continue in that space,
Mm-hmm.
because she's no longer in the care of her mom. She is
Yes.
now literally under the care of me and Job here in Texas. Okay. So we realized that we had, or I also realized that it was that place of feeling like, I want to just be kind of in the background, had to come to an end, you know
Mm-hmm.
and now become part of being actively involved, between the three of us, and recognize, our interests are to this child. We want to be there for this child, physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, for this child,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to come to a place where we had to start talking, where it was
Yeah.
proactive. We are talking, just
Uh-huh.
not me using Job or you going through Job, but to where we could talk, the three of us.
So were you ever afraid of discipline because of fear of being the evil stepmother?
Yes,
Because there's that big thing about being the evil stepmother and the evil mother-in-law. Those are the only two evil
yes,
women.
yes.
So
That
were
is
you
very true.
afraid also because of that?
Yes, I was there was that fear of being branded as
Mm-hmm.
an evil stepmother. Yes,
Okay.
there was that concern on my part, like, and not because there was anything I did that would warrant that, but there was just, it's that thing, like I said, coming in, like, I just want to make sure that, I don't ever want to be looked at as that, for
Mm-hmm.
whatever reason, yes. But
Yes.
there was that fear of being branded as being an evil stepmother.
Did you
Yeah.
guys consult your daughter's mother, um, to see what she wants? Because she also had a right to say, no, I don't want Yvonne disciplining my child. I don't want Yvonne, whatever. Did you guys talk about that at that point?
I
So,
never had that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think, Job, you did have it with, but
so,
that
so
was early on, and
yeah,
we
it was
were
early
talking
on,
about
right?
it.
So an assumption that everything was okay. But I think also the other thing that helped is we didn't have a lot of moments where discipline had to be administered, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of helped too. But I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that initial conversation that I'm having with them, hey, I'm going to settle down. I don't think I gave them room to hear feedback. So I thought the silence meant we're good, and the silence
Mm-hmm.
meant anything. All right.
Mm.
So now that we're raising this child together, there could be a few complaints here and there, but it's nothing major. We kind of get together, talk about it, and then pass the message back to Yvonne.
Mm-hmm.
Realize it's okay. But I think it's now starting to go to college. It started to register differently
Mm.
because now I'm thinking So this woman is about to lose her only child away to another state.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she's coming to dad and Yvonne, and she has siblings here. And you know that siblings dynamics, because Yvonne did a really, really good job. And even her mom always said, those are your sisters. So in our family, we don't do the stepdad, right? Her
Good.
mom
Mm-hmm.
her mom did a good job on her end. Yvonne did a good job with these other new siblings coming in. And they've always known her as being big sister. She's the firstborn and then that way. Which you find very hard because now she has a new, her own biological kids. But it's the grace that she handled that. And then um, our daughter's mom also pushing from this other end, that helped that transition to be good. So from my end, I'm thinking, things are good. But it's only, I think it hit when now she was going to college, 90 minutes away from here. And we had a conversation, and we all took her to college, helped her settle in her dorm and everything.
The three of you, that's what you
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
everyone, including the sisters,
And the
right?
children, yes. Okay.
Yeah, and so now, and that's when our daughter gave us this name of parental unit. And,
Okay.
and I think in hindsight, that parental unit comes because now when she goes to college and people ask you about your family, you want to have a way to explain it that makes sense to you. This is when things started kind of popping up for me, and I'm just like, okay. And I think it's when we got her to her dorm, and I saw her mom weep and how she.
Mm.
Then I realized there was also that detachment that was happening, and she was losing her child.
Mm.
And then all the things that I had not done right started coming back to me, and all the assumptions that I'd made over the years. I was like, man. But the thing is, I'm here, I'm feeling all these things, but I don't know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I can only make a few adjustments in there, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like every semester when we take her back to school, you're here, we do lunch together. And I think for me, that started the whole thing of understanding. I should have brought this family way back when.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the hard conversations we had could not even have happened
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't close that gap. She struggled figuring out her loyalties,
Mm-hmm.
struggle she should not have been in, when if all just the adults in the room could have sat down and said, hey, this is how I want my kid to be raised when she's with
Mm.
you. And when she comes back, this is what we're doing on this other end. So we'd like to see it continue. These
Mm-hmm.
are things that she's probably discussed with us, where she's how she's struggling, or these are some of her strengths. Those conversations don't happen until now she's in college. And then we start to see, oh man, we've missed opportunities. And
Mm.
so start to kind of embark on that journey of starting to solidify this parental unit. Is it easy? No, there's a lot of fears from everybody around the table, right?
Mm. Yes.
There, there- there's a fear for Yvonne, there's a fear for me, there's a fear for her. Because literally everything had been surface till this moment.
Mm.
Okay.
So now, how do we come and become vulnerable? Because this vulnerability is the only way we're going to start to figure out what our thoughts are individually,
Mm-hmm.
have those tough conversations, and let the apologies kind of happen.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's create a new foundation and create the new boundaries that need to be able to. First, let's clean up this house, because once we clean up this house, then we'll be a much better support system to this young
Mm-hmm.
adult going out into the world
Mm.
itself.
Yeah.
So apologies happened.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
a lot of
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
there's
So,
a lot of
yeah. So there's been a moment, we've had, many moments even where her mom has come here, we've shared a meal, we've discussed issues, that, just being able to know that we can talk and we speak as one voice.
we've
And I
prayed
think that has been very, very important, especially as even Nicole has transitioned out of college and now is a working adult, through those years, being able to address issues, but address issues as one in one voice. And, just like he said, wishing what we know now, then we would
Mm-hmm.
have started earlier, you know it
Mm-hmm.
would probably have allowed us to resolve a lot of assumptions, made,
Yes.
out of myths and stereotypes that we put forward because of maybe things we've heard, or we have allowed people to speak over us,
Yes.
but being
Mhm.
able to be in a position where if we could, and granted, I understand there may be some relationships where that is just not possible
Yes.
because of the volatility or the toxicity of
Yes.
that relationship. But in our situation, we had an opportunity to
Yes.
have done that because there was that environment.
Yes.
We
You were
were
just
not dealing with
fearful.
that. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
where, so that's one of the things I say in hindsight, when they always say hindsight is 2020, it
Yes.
really is,
It really
that
is.
you could
Yes.
look at a situation and say, you know what, we could have started this earlier. We could have been talking more earlier on to be able to be a parental unit that speaks in one voice from early on, from when we got married all through to where we are today. you
Mm-hmm.
know
And
but when we look back now, you say, okay, fine, well, it didn't happen then, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen going forward.
Yeah.
That we're
Mm-hmm.
still in that space where we have a WhatsApp group for the three of
Good.
us.
Mm-hmm.
When we there's something that needs to be discussed, it's put on the WhatsApp group.
yeah, we
you
have a
know
and Dolly, one of the things that particular situation just doesn't affect blended. Even if you have two parents who are in the same home and in
Yes.
different worlds, we create a valley for these kids to struggle to figure out how they're going to navigate life. Because if
Yes.
the parents are in totally two different wavelengths, it doesn't matter whether it's the blended. There's some principle just they just carry over, and it doesn't matter if it's just a single family where the kids have been in. So I think for me, there's a lot of just different things that were coming up, and you know, as we even having this discussion, we realize that fear can be very paralyzing.
Mm-hmm.
When we had that conversation, and when we all sat around this table, and when we asked God to just step into that conversation and prepare the hearts for the tough conversations that are going to happen, one, God worked it out.
Mm.
Good. So you prayed together. Good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We,
Oh yeah.
and we didn't even say, it wasn't, and I'm not saying it was easy. It was a step and step process because we just kept building and building on
Mm-hmm.
stuff to a point where now we look back, those phone calls have become easier. And I look back and I say, fear can hold us back from things that God wants to work in us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We're so afraid. It's almost like we feel like God can't handle that situation, right?
Yes. We want to help God out.
What else,
Yeah.
right? And I look at some of the ideas that I had. I'm just like, man, this is total failure, right?
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
I thank God for His grace because now what that has done for me is to parent differently.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that 20-year-old dad and this new dad, totally different. And
Mm-hmm.
and even our oldest tells me, man, you're so different. That situation, even I'll catch myself and say, no, down I'd have handled differently. It was me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's who's this new person, right? So I'm starting to embrace this new person, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also been owning the things that I did wrong,
Mm-hmm. So as
owning
we wind down, sorry, what were you saying?
yeah, owning the lessons that I should have learned. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we are winding down, and I just want to ask an important question, which is, from your daughter's perspective, what
Mhm.
feedback has she given you in terms of her struggles? Okay, so like one of them, you said you actually noticed, her wanting to call you mom, right?
Yeah.
What other struggles do you think she's had? Did she feel that she didn't like the way you do something, or she prefers the way the mom does something? And if she told you, oh, I don't want it this way, I want it the way mom, like, did it hurt your feelings? What is her perspective in all this? Because I know now she's old enough to kind of maybe bring up some of these things. So can you briefly tell us some of the things that she says were a struggle for her?
Uh, so I'm trying to think of situations where, um, some of the conversations you'd have, like for instance, I had a certain way I like to make my bed.
Mm-hmm.
And so trying to teach her how to
Make a
make
bed.
the make a bed, but in the way I like to see it, you know,
Yeah,
I know we really struggled with that. And I eventually just had to let it go and be like, it's okay, you know, how she does her bed. And, you know, later on I thought maybe, you know, that's how maybe how her mom does it, you know,
I
and maybe
know.
I am trying to impose something that, you know, for her, she's like, no, I like the way my mom makes my, tells me how to make a bed, you know, small things like that. But you realize that, you know, it's easy to allow something that small
Exactly.
to become a very big problem,
Exactly.
you know. And I
Hmm.
struggled with it for a while. I'm not gonna lie. You know, I was like, I'd walk in the room and I see the bed. I'm like, oh, I want to see my corners tucked in it. And I'm
I
like,
know.
tell me
We
how
were
to
taught
do
that
it,
in
you
home
know.
science. Yeah.
And then I had to finally just let it go. And just, I remember one person once saying, you don't want to major on the minors.
Hmm.
Yeah, don't major on the minors, you know. So that one does, you know, that does come to mind. I'm just trying to think if there's anything she said that it could have been different. I'll say this. I appreciate the opportunity I've had to have an older daughter and then to
Hmm.
have the young siblings,
Hmm.
because it's in this space too that I realize I see my shortcomings, you
Mm.
know, of motherhood, and what I'm doing about what I can do different, you know, to
Hmm.
where I'm like, you know, and that has even involved me going for therapy to be able to allow me to become a better parent now, that because I have seen what it looks, you know, just seeing what it's like to have, you know, a child starting from 12 on to adulthood, and then having these young children come through later on. And then I see, okay, the, you know, now because really when I think about it, you know, being that she was older, she wasn't really home a lot during, you know, because even when she after high school, even when she went to college, she didn't stay home because she was staying on in campus. So the times we really got to see her, and if anything, the time we really spend day in day out is after college, after graduation. But now you're dealing with a 20+ year old person, you know, so this is no
Hmm.
longer a child, this is a grown woman, you know, who
Hmm.
is working and getting herself together, putting herself together. And, you know, so, you know, it's, there's no longer a childlike, you know, you're not going to be doing anything because you're not talking as adults, you know. So even our conversations are adults, they're adult conversations, you know. We're not, you know, I can't be talking about disciplining a 20+ year old person, you
Yes,
know.
yes, yes, yes.
You know,
Yeah.
but then, you know, now, but it's given me that insight as to, okay, now that I've seen that, and I've seen even sometimes even how I react to situations, some good, some bad, some, oh, I could do a better job. And then having these younger girls to be able to be like, okay, as a parent, okay, what's going on here, what can I do? And then also realizing, okay, what are some of the things I need to fix? And that has even involved going for therapy, just to
Good,
speak to
good.
somebody who can give me insights and allow me to
Mhm.
start thinking, so that, you know, I also don't repeat mistakes that out of naivety or just out of assumptions being made.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm. So I want to thank you so much, Job and Yvonne. We are at 1 minute and 20, 1 hour and 21 minutes. This has been a long conversation, but a very, very important conversation. So briefly, can you guys give us your parting shots? I'll start with you, Yvonne.
Oh. Gosh, I will say that blended families are unique. You know, they are unique, but they're also God's. They're part of God's plan. You know,
Hmm.
the other day actually, because, you know, my daughter was like, "So what are you? I heard you saying you're going to be doing a podcast." I said yes. And then I said, "Did you know that even Christ was in a blended family? When you really think about it,
Yes.
he
Yeah.
was in a blended
Yeah.
family because his
Yes.
father was his heavenly father, and then
Yes.
his brothers, their father was Joseph. So
Yes.
there's really nothing different between us and Christ himself. So
Mm-hmm.
Christ does understand what it's
Mm.
like growing up in a blended family, because we are also a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also it's also, God understands, and he creates provisions for
Mm-hmm.
that space. But more than anything else, being in a position where you can allow yourselves to be, you know, like what Job always says, being teachable, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to learn and grow, especially because we know that blended family percentage is growing over the years. Lots of
Mhm.
families are caught up in this blended family situation, but it's possible, it's beautiful, and there's a plan from, it's part of God's plan. So that's what I would say as my parting short.
What about you, Mr. Jobby?
Oh man, let me tell you. One of the things she didn't say is now I've become the outsider. The conversations that happen between amongst those three women that sometimes I'm brought in last, right?
But that's a beautiful thing, right?
It is, and I've asked God to continue to give me grace, right? So that relationship, even for Yvonne to grow with our daughter, where they can talk things and I'm excluded,
Yeah.
and they make decisions. I think it's allowed me to even just to accept some of the things, and I think I really want to thank my daughter in this space where she's at, because the conversations we're having are those conversations that should have been had before. And because I
Mhm.
didn't create that space for her, she's teaching me new things that I'm being able to apply to her sisters. And
Mhm.
for me, just like Yvonne, I'm also in therapy because some of those things I'm having to unpack to try and figure out where does this come from, right?
Mm,
Some of the fears and some of the ideas that were spoken over me and around me uh, regarding blended families, I'm in it. How can I best become the best dad, the best husband, and the best friend even to my daughter's mom, because we all need each other, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
even how do I teach these other younger girls how to refer and also respect our oldest daughter's mom, because no matter what we do, we're always going to be connected. And it's
Mhm.
only God can help teach me through the things.
Wow. I would just like to thank you so much, Yvonne and Joby. It is so nice and so heartwarming to hear your story. And the fact that you guys are open, you're not afraid of talking about your mistakes. I know that you're going to bless and also teach other families on what to do. And especially because, generally the divorce rate is 50%, but among blended families, it's 70. It's much
mm-hmm.
higher
Yes.
because of the same thing that we just talked about that nobody talks about and nobody thinks about. So I'm so happy. And you also told me that in your church you have a ministry for blended families.
Yes.
And I know that through this podcast, some people who have issues, in their blended families, maybe will reach out. And I'm going to put your contact information, whatever you
Sure.
allow me,
Yeah.
in this podcast. And I want to thank you so much for your time. And I just want to say thank you to all those who are listening. And I want to say bye bye until next time.
All right,
Okay. Bye. Thank you so much, Dolly. Thank you for having us on this platform.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.